Welcome to the DataViewing channel. Today we are going to start a new series on Azure security. And why I'm starting this series? Because security aspects are often overlooked by different YouTubers. What I have seen, many of them has created end-to-end projects, but they never show the security aspects which needs to be taken care while creating any architecture. And as part of security series, today we are going to start learning about Azure Managed Identities. I will also show you today how we can create them, what are the different types of identities, like how you're going to decide which identity you're going to use. And even across different clouds, we will see how AWS and GCP work. They don't have concept of identities, but they have similar concepts. So everything will be covered in this video. Now, first question, what is managed identity? And Microsoft recommends use managed identity whenever possible. So it should be your first preference when you are designing any architecture in Azure. Management of secrets, credentials, certificates, and keys used to secure communication between services. But this is often painful and time consuming. When I started my career back in 2010, we used to have some non-human accounts, or we call them service accounts. And non-human accounts IDs shared between the colleagues who used to get some application access. And whenever that change is required in the credentials for these non-human accounts, it was often painful because it was shared across different colleagues. And luckily in this modern world, we are having concept of managed identities, and they address this issue quite well. How? Like we have different application or services in Azure, and they can use managed identities to obtain Microsoft Intra tokens without having to manage any kind of credentials. So focus on without having to manage any kind of credentials. No credentials needs to be managed. And for different resources, like suppose there is an app service called Logic App you are going to build. Logic App needs to fetch some data from storage account, and it has to populate the data after some analysis in the database. So in this case, Logic App can use managed identities to get the access to both the database and the service accounts. And you need not give any username password, any connection string, any kind of service principal, nothing is required. So that makes life so easy. No secrets, no keys, no passwords required. And you will get more clarity when we see the demo, how these identities are created. Azure injects identity tokens automatically. You don't manage them. So behind the scene, when a service or application access any resource via these identities, Azure injects the identity tokens and you don't manage them at all. Nothing sensitive needs to be stored in config files, GitHub, or environment variables. And token refresh automatically. They are soft-lived OAuth tokens. And in case of service principal, you often require rotation of secrets. But in the case of managed identities, you don't need any manual rotation, unlike the service principals. Now we have understand what problem they address. The problem was management of secret credentials, certificates, and keys, which are not at all required. And even no secret rotation is required here because that happened automatically behind the scene, taken by care by the Azure infrastructure. Now let's see main Azure services that supports manage identities. First set is compute and app hosting, and you can see it includes Azure virtual machines, app service, Azure function apps, Azure logic apps, Azure container apps, Azure Kubernetes services. So all of these services supports identities. Second set belongs to data and integration services, and it includes Azure Data Factory, the ETL tool, Azure Synapse pipelines, Azure Event Hub for event-driven architecture, Azure Service Bus again for event-driven architecture, and then storage and key vault, which are basically used as target for providing access to identities. Third set include automation services, which includes Azure Automation Runbooks, Azure API Management, and Azure Batch. This is not the complete list, but I try to mention majority of them. Now let's see what are types of identities in Azure. First is system assigned, second is user assigned. And as the name suggests, system assigned is something which is taken care by Azure. And user assigned, we as engineers or admin take care. There is a different how both of these identities work and maintain. Let's see more. So system assigned managed identities. They are automatically created with an Azure resource once you enable them. So when the resource is created, you can then enable the system assigned managed identities. But you have to enable, okay? And they are tied to the life cycle of the resource. Or you can say the list inside the resource. You can enable or disable anytime. Automatically removed when the resource is deleted. And that's explained why I'm telling it's tied to the life cycle of the resource. So as the resource live, the identity there when you enable it, and as the resource deleted, the identity also got deleted. So no maintenance or housekeeping required. And they are used to authenticate to your services without storing credentials. Single identity is available per resource. So for any resource, you can enable only one identity at a time. That's true only about system assigned managed identities. And they are not available for all services, but majority of the services. Easy setup and no extra cost. So no, there is no extra cost for using these identities. Now let's see user assigned managed identities. They are created as a standalone Azure resource. So they are resource, okay? They don't live inside a resource as we have seen in system assigned managed identities. And that's the huge difference between them. Can be assigned to one or more Azure resources. So single user assigned managed identity can be used by multiple resources. So not just per resource, okay? You can create, read, update, delete these identities, and you can update tags, metadata anytime as it's resource only. Okay? They are managed independently of the resources. It is assigned, and so user need to take care of cleanup. We will quickly see later how we can find out the existing user assigned and system assigned identities, because that's important, right? When you want to clean up especially user assigned identities, maybe you are doing some kind of testing. Later on, when the project completion happened, you want to do complete cleanup, then you can find out what assigned identities you have, and you can take necessary action depending on your requirements. No extra cost again, but requires some more setup and management compared to system assigned identities. Why? Because they are standalone Azure resource and you need to handle them. And when you delete the resource, there is no impact on user assigned managed identities. They are again broadly supported but not universal in Azure. Same true about system assigned managed identities. Okay, let's understand both of them using a scenario. So there is a new employee who has joined a company, and this company has multiple departments. Now he issued a personalized company badge or tag that gives access to finance, HR, and IT department. After 1 year, the employee decided that he is going to join another company. So he resigned, and on the last day, his company badge got shredded. So it no more exists. So same happened for system assigned identity. They are tied, as in this case, the company badge is tied to the tenure of the employee. Similarly, for system assigned identities, the lifetime of the identity is tied with the resource. When resource exists, identity is there once you enable it, and when resource deleted, system assigned identity also got deleted. Now let's understand how it's different from user assigned. In the case of user assigned, there is a company and there are usable access badges which are used by multiple people in the organization, and they can get access to finance, HR, IT, or any other department. Now they can be from uh, any department, that doesn't matter, but they are going to use something which is reusable across. And when any one of them left the organization, the reusable access badges exist. They just return it. Okay. So similar to user assigned identities. When any employee leaving the organization, the reusable access badges not shredded, unlike company badges or tags. Now let's understand more. Now let's see in detail how the access is given to identities. So when we create or enable identity for any service or application, then it will access some target resources. As I said before, can be database, can be a keyboard, can be storage account. It's done by a process of role assignments. So the role will be assigned to the identity, and all of these roles have some permissions granted depending on the role. There is a concept of role-based access control, RBAC. And what it means, the access will be given and controlled by the roles. So if someone is admin, he should have admin access. If someone is a reader, then he just need to have read access on the target resource. And it's a beautiful concept where things are handled very well. Each identity is assigned roles. And roles can be built-in or custom. Now, why we have custom roles? Sometimes you need access given to an individual which are not covered by built-in role. They are very specific access. So every cloud gives us the flexibility of creating custom role these days. And that role then give the access based on the principle of least privilege. Now, what is the principle of least privilege? It means that the user should only have access to what they absolutely need in order to perform their responsibilities and no more in their role. So minimum set of access needs to be given, because if you give more access to someone, he might use that access maybe for some wrong reason, or maybe in some accident he might do some mistake and delete data, suppose. That's a huge risk. So everywhere, be it Fabric, Databricks, Snowflake, or any popular tool, now the access is controlled by role-based access control. And think of it like currently, suppose I am working in an organization and I need admin access. Okay, so admin role will be assigned to my identity. Then I can, the application or service can easily access the data. And later on, I left the company. Then there is no impact, right? Because it's not like user is managing the access, managed by identity. So there is no impact on the running applications. Now let's see everything in the Azure portal, how we can use the concept of system assigned and user assigned identity. What's the difference, and how we can even see the existing ones, because that's important for housekeeping. So we will use logic apps to understand more about the system assigned and user assigned identities. Click on logic apps, click on create. Now logic app has two main hosting options, consumption and standard. We're not going to discuss in detail about them, but let me tell you that consumption one is multi-tenant. It uses shared compute and it's very cheap. You won't imagine that much cheap, like £2 or £3 if you are running 8 to 10 times daily in a month. So monthly charges will be just £2 or £3 max. Very cheap, but standard is costly. And each one of them has pros and cons. So let's click a consumption one. Click on select. Logic app name. So I will give test sys assigned. We will use Yuga South, and it's a good practice to give tags. We will create some production logic apps in the future that will cover all those aspects. Now review create and click on create. Okay, so logic app got created. Now let's create them. Go to designer. You need to add a trigger. Trigger is something which will tell us when the logic app will start. So it should be one trigger. We will use schedule recurrence. Time zone, we will use UK time zone, London 1. Here it is. Okay, let's click on plus and action. Now what we are going to do, we are going to list blob. Okay. Okay, so list blob need access, right? What we will do, we will go and select the, so we need to enable the identity. What I will do, I will just delete this and save it. Then we'll come back later and we need to go to identity and just enable this. So as I mentioned before, system assigned taken care by Azure. As soon you enable, the principal ID generated. But we will not give any role assignment because I want to show you it will fail. User assigned, there is nothing. You can again add any user assigned identity here. So you got both options. Now let's go to again designer. Let's go to overview and disable it. Oh, it already ran because I will put on schedule, right? Anyway, let's disable it. When you disable it, it will not run. So let's go to designer and we will again use list blob. So we will say list blob. There are two options. We will use list blob. And now you can see it has chosen the system assign manage identity. Okay, and it's connected to new con system 070126. I created before this connection, so I will change it and you can do housekeeping for them. Again, we will see that later, but for now just add a new connection. We will call con sys identity. Authentication type, you have multiple options. We will explore all of them in future tutorials, but let's first see. Access key is not secure compared to identity, so you should always use manage identity as your first preference. Okay, so click create new. It will create a new connection. This is for Azure Blob storage. Okay, so now we have selected system assign. You can change even this when you enable the user assign. We'll show you. So now list blob, we need to give a storage account and a folder name. Go to storage center. You can search here storage. You can easily go. Now what I will do, I will go to data lake 15312. Show you that there is a data. Go to storage browser and in the blob container we have a folder called dat letter. So we will copy this, or you can give even URL. We will use the name. We will put the name, enter custom value. You have to click, and we will again give dat letter folder. Right. We have not given any role to the identity. Let's see what will happen. Click on save. And let's change this because I don't want any parallel runs to confuse. 8 minutes. We can always run it manually whenever you want. So just it running every 8 minutes. It's okay. Saving the workflow. Workflow is shaped. Now we will going to run it. Now let's run this. You need to enable first, then only it allows the run. Now it's enabled. Click on run. Assurance. Let's see what happened. It failed. Click on failed to see why it failed. Forbidden. Why forbidden? Because there is no access. You can see 403 authorization permission mismatch because there is no access given. Now let's give access. As I mentioned before, you can give access. Let's go to test is assigned, logic app, and there are two ways of giving access. One way is you can go click on role assignment here and you can give, but this is a preview, so I do never want to use preview options. What I will do, I will go to the target resource, access control, click on add role assignment, and here are the roles I was talking. So they are pre-built roles. For this demo, we are going to use pre-built role only that is already existing. So I will give storage because we just want read access for listing blobs. Storage blob, and you can see we have owner, reader, contributor, delegator, and some other. We will select just reader. When you click select this, just click on next. So storage data, a storage blob data reader. Now you can give access to user group or service principal, but we will look for better option, which is manage identity, and then click on select members. Here you need to select the option. Now you can see both options, user assign and system assign. They are categorized further depending on the service. So we will select the logic app, test is assigned. So role assignment is now happening for that identity which we have created. Okay, and it's against RBAC, role based access control, because somebody needs to access as storage blob data reader for listing the blob data. Let's select and review and assign. You can further apply conditions even if you want. Adding role assignment. Okay, it's done. The role has been assigned. Click here. You can see now. Okay, that has worked. Now let's run to further validate that and run it. Show runs and boom, it worked. You can see it has taxi zone lookup CSP, workplace pension sample B CSP. Okay, we can see even here just to confirm. Two files both has come. So system assigned identity has worked. Now let's disable it because I want to show you everything. Now we will disable and again run. So go to identity and turn it off. Click on save. Disable and again run. Failed. You will see you get does not have managed identity enabled or entity has been deleted. Managed identity of the workflows updated recently. Please wait for 2 minutes and try again. Okay. Sometimes take time, but whenever I have seen, it's never take time when you attach it to a role and when you enable it. So that confirms identity role assignment is the main thing. When role is detached, it will stop working and you can again enable it. That's the whole point of using these identities. They make life so simple. Next thing, what we will do, we will create user assigned identity for this. So let's go to identity and here. Now I already have some existing user assigned identity. I want to show you. When you click on add, you can see multiple options and they all are user assigned. So one way of checking this, another way is you can even go here and click on manage identities. If you don't see this option, just type here. So managed identities here, and it will show you all the user assigned identity. But remember, no system assigned identity will be shown here, only user assigned identity. So let's create a new user assigned identity. You can click on create and we will say test user assigned. This is again a very good option. If you want the isolation scope for the resource, you can select regional. So what it will do, it will only allow it in a particular region. Again, a security aspect for critical applications. So we are not going to select this. We will just tag also. We will ignore this time, but it's good to have use tags. Click on create. And that's why it's a standalone resource because you are creating it separately. For system assign, we have just enabled it within that resource, but this time we are creating it separately. And this user assigned identity can be given any kind of role. More than one is allowed. So, okay, that has gone to resource. So these are all the identities we have, and we have just created this identity, test user assign. Now let's go to, we should have given a different name because we are again checking both the identities, but that's okay. So let's click on add and test user assign. Now you won't see here, sometime it take time to should type it, test user assign. Now you can see your option, click on that and add. User assigned identity has been attached to this logic app. Next we will give this identity the role. So just we have to go to storage accounts again, and how you can see the existing one, you can see everything in the access control again. You can download role assignments or you can go to role assignment and you can easily find out your roles which you have already given. Let's add role assignment for user. Now again we will use reader because we want to give minimum access. Blob reader, blob reader. Click on next, manage identity, select members, and this time we will select user assignment identity, and this time again test user assign. Select review and assign. Done. But now we have to change the logic gap because it configured to use system assigned identity. Now we are going to change that. We will go here and we will select user assigned. Okay, we will change the connection and we can add a new. We will say con user assign. Select. Okay, now everything is okay. Let's click on save and run it. And it has worked. This time we use user assigned identity. Again, you can see it's coming. Yeah. So you can again enable or disable. Not disable, I should say detach or attach here. For user assigned, we don't have any option of enable or disabling, but what we can do, we can and remove. Okay, that's how we will remove the user assigned identity if required. Now in the modern world, everything taken care by infrastructure as code tools like Terraform, but internally they will use some kind of API calls or something, but everything remains same. The concept remains same, doesn't matter. Okay. So we have seen how we can use user assigned identity. Now this user assigned identity, we can give even assign more roles. Let's understand how we can see the resources assigned to identities. There are few possible ways, but we will look at the easiest options. So one such option is Resource Graph Explorer. Okay, let's click on that. Now Resource Graph Explorer is quite useful when you want to see any kind of data regarding resources. That can be any resource within the Azure ecosystem. And you need to write KQL query, nothing but Gusto query language. The same query which we use in the log analysis in Azure. I will create a separate video on KQL as it's important to understand even when you're working in Fabric or Azure, any kind of log analysis. It's really useful to know, and it's not that much difficult. So how will I write the KQL? I will get the data from resources. Now remember, when you type anything in this editor, don't use tab. That's not gonna work. You have to use your enter. So I will press enter, and then a pipe symbol will be created. It's like basically it's creating some all the operations in a stepwise manner. Okay, so what I will do, I need to select where, and I will give enter again, dot type, and this time we will just select. So remember this to equal to as the logical condition, and I give system assigned. Now you can run the query, you can even save a query. So you have all sort of options, and even on the result you can view data in charts. If it's aggregated, it's everything here, okay, which you usually need. Now let's run this query. So I got the system assigned identities, but these are the resources which are using the system assigned identity. Let's see which. So you have property system topic, that is the event grid system topic. You can see the type. Then we have Unity Catalog Access Connector, that is a Databricks one. Then we have email domain, which is event grid domain. And here are the system topics, that is test prop 007. And then we have logic app, data view, which is nothing but a purview account, and Python test 1. So we got all the system assigned identities. Now, if you want to see user assigned, again, you can change it. And run the query. So this time you see our app. Sysassigned, user assigned, again, test logic app. These are logic apps. Then we have test webhook, Python CI/CD is a function app. So I've added, this will list all the columns. Now, if you want to select few columns, you can again give project. Enter. What columns you want? ID, name, type, kind. So if I again run, now it will give you the selected column list, as you can see. Yeah. Now you can give logical condition, like I can write all condition again, and then I can list both the identities. And here we need to give again identity, enter, dot, type. Yeah, now it will work. So run query. Now we get both. But here you are not able to see the identity name. Why? Because it's part of some JSON data. And how we can fetch that? We need to use another query. So I have saved one query, query to get identities. Click on that. Now this is the query I have saved previously. And here I am only fetching user assigned. Of course, you can add the all condition for both. It's a KQL syntax. We will cover that later. So, and sorting by name. So if I run the query, now you can see this is the identity name, test user assigned. Okay. So I will paste this query in the description. This is one of the way of checking the identities, and you can automate this flow. Like you want these identity, you can fetch the list, then you can delete it in case you don't find any data, any resources against them. So let's see another way. Now, another way is we can run the command in the shell. So let's activate the shell. Meantime, let me copy the query. Right. So if you see this query, AZ is basically for Azure Cloud Cell, resource list, list the resource, passing a query, identity type is system assigned, and what parameters or what columns we are interested is a name, principal ID, and this bit showing data into output. That output should be a table format. So enter. You can see all of them. Again, you can add other. So I will give type, type, kind, comma, because you have just, let's press enter again. You can see this. So you can add others if you want. Now again, let's see how we can write the logical condition, because we are interested in getting both the identities. You have to use this time, not all, you have to use this. And we will give identity dot type equal to user assigned. Great. Now you can see. Okay. So you have two ways. Another way is using the API, REST API basically. So it's useful when you want to do some kind of analysis, and there are n number of ways, but I find these two ways simple compared to others. So we have understood now how we can check the existing resources for the identities. Next, we will see some of the best practice recommendation, and we will follow the Microsoft recommendation in this case. You will understand these scenarios when there is a rapid creation of resources required. Okay, then the recommendation is to use user assigned identity. Why? Because you are creating multiple managed identities in a short span of time. And when you just deploy these, because they are a huge number, that might exceed the rate limit for Microsoft intra object. Okay, and you get this HTTP 429 error. And moreover, when a resource is deleted, it is always soft deleted. So that will remain till 30 days. After 30 days only, it will be fully purged. So in order to avoid such challenges, whenever you have some rapid creation of resources required with managed identities, always recommendation is to use user assigned identity. Now, when you have a scenario of replicated resources of application, or maybe that resource is there and it's creating like duplicates web servers running in an app service, in even in such scenarios, its recommendation is to use user assigned identity. Why? Because fewer role assignments are required. A single user assigned identity can be used across. And if you remember, in case of a system assigned identity, we have to create an identity per resource. Okay, only one. So that's why even in this scenario, I will paste the link. You can read later. The recommendation is to use user assigned identity. In case of any compliance related scenario, recommendation is to use user assigned identity. Because in this case, any organization, they want that all the identity creation process must go through an approval process using a single user assigned identity. That is easier, right? Compared to having the system assigned identities. And moreover, user assigned identity can be created before the resource creation. It's not at all possible in case of system assigned identity because it enables only after the resource is created. Similarly, for scenario when we have access required before a resource is deployed, same reason. In case of audit logging, the recommendation is to use system assigned identity because in this case we are interested to log the resource rather than the identity. Okay, so audit logging, system assigned identity. Permissions lifecycle management, again system assigned identity, and this is the case when you're doing some kind of POC, like identity needs to be deleted as soon as resource gets deleted, so they are tied to the life cycle of the resource. Even in such scenario, system assigned identity are a great option. So let's see how that system assigned identity reduce administration. So if you have multiple VMs and you enable the system assigned identity for storage account and key vault account, in this case, it needs to have a role assignment for storage data reader as well as for each, I am talking for each virtual machine, and you need to have another role assignment for key vault reader. So for single resource, you are creating two role assignments for the same system assigned identity. And suppose you have 4 VMs, so that multiply. Okay. So basically 8 role assignments are required. 4 for storage account and 4 for key vault. In the case of user assigned identity, a single identity can be used across all the 4 virtual machines. One role assignment for storage account and another role assignment for the key vault. And that simplifies the whole administration, isn't it? Moreover, we can also create security groups. Single security group can address this role assignment very well again. We have understood like What are the scenarios where we will prefer one identity over another? And this example shows, like in the case of system assigned identity, we need more administration, especially regarding the role assignments. And just think of an enterprise. So when you are working in a big enterprise, there are so many people creating so much stuff. So it's become quite important to understand this difference and take a decision accordingly. Now let's see how the options are different across clouds. So in the case of Azure, the identity attached to the resource is managed identity. For AWS, we have something called IAM role. And in the case of GCP, Google Cloud, we have service account. For system assigned equivalent, like system assigned identity in Azure, in AWS, we have something called service link roles or instance roles. But in the case of GCP, we have a partial implementation called default service account. For the user assigned equivalent, we have something called reusable IAM roles in AWS, and service accounts are also reusable. Now, can they attach to multiple identities to a resource? Yes. Even in the case of AWS, will via multiple IAM role by policies, although EC2 can have only one instance profile. And in the case of GCP, again, multiple service accounts for JKE pods, one per VM. That is the case with the GCP. And secretless authentication without using any secrets? Yes. AWS, GCP, Azure, all are same in this aspect. So we have today understand about the identities, how they are different from each other, how they are useful, what decision making you need to take when you are choosing one of them. We have seen the scenarios, and we have also understood how the similar concept exists in AWS and GCP. We will keep on continuing exploring Azure security best practices in future. We will cover service principle. We will see how these concepts are implemented in a production-like environment, how CI/CD pipelines work. Everything will be covered. And my intention is to create more videos for multi-cloud architecture where we will see when we have both AWS and Azure interacting with each other. And nowadays, every big organization is going towards multi-cloud architectures. So we will also see how that whole landscape is changing, the iceberg format, and there are many other things to discuss. The open link architecture, for example. Like and subscribe the channel. We invest a lot of time in creating this content, so your motivation really helps in growing further. Thank you so much.